This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamel.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
All right, Bill, we're here for episode number 7 and property number 10.
Excellent. Sounds great.
What was the address for this one?
This was One Irving Place in Menands, just outside Albany.
Okay, and do you remember when you purchased it?
That was purchased in 99, 2000 time. It was right around when we did that commercial real estate deal. So, without really looking back specifically, I believe that we may have bought this property just before the commercial flip or just after, but it was in that same general time frame.
Okay, and if I remember correctly, you have one single family home in Menands at this time, correct?
We had one single family home in Menands at this time, so we did have probably 4 years of familiarity with this particular small little cul-de-sac area. So we liked Menands.
And was this another single family home?
No, this was a 2-family.
Okay, and it was pretty close to that first purchase?
Yeah, it was very close. So you come in off of the main street in Menands, you take your turn into this cul-de-sac area, and you would enter our single family from the rear. And as you're entering that driveway into the rear of the single family, this 2-family was directly right on the right-hand side.
Is that why you purchased it? Because of the proximity to the property you already owned?
Yeah, we were still looking to accumulate a portfolio. And this particular property, I was tipped off by my tenant in the single family. So she was a longtime Menands resident, along with living right there in that cul-de-sac area, knew several of the people in the neighborhood, and she had let me know that I should keep my eye out for this one because the owner was having difficulty.
How is the layout of this property?
This was a typical 2-family, similar to what we were purchasing in Albany. 2-family, 3-bedroom, 1-bath apartment down, 3-bedroom, 1-bath apartment up. That typical up and down style 2-family that is super common in Albany and the other inner cities adjacent to Albany, as well as some housing stock in Menands.
How did you fund it?
We funded this one with the homestead construction rehab. So it was a foreclosure on the multiple listing service, and we got a pretty good price on it. And it didn't need a real lot of work. So it was just a matter of getting in on the purchase price and utilizing a little bit of construction rehab money to get it up to speed. But this one was fairly painless, on the rehab side.
Do you remember exactly what it needed?
It was a major cleanup. So I believe that we took advantage of this time just like we would any of these older buildings, specifically these 2-families. When you get in, you always have some wall patching to do just to get the walls prepped so they look better once you do the finished paint. That's always important to get it nice and fresh and clean. And we redid the hardwood floors. Was a improvement of choice, just because it makes such a large difference. So you get in on these properties, specifically this one, where the hardwood floors were, they're hardwood floors, so very durable and decent, but probably heavily scratched up. And after you do a refinishing and polyurethane finish on the hardwood floors, it literally brings them back to new.
Now that you had a couple of rehabs under your tool belt, did you notice a difference in your construction abilities? Did you have a system down that really helped you?
Yeah, spend as little money as possible to get it rented. So yeah, that was it. So being a bit facetious there, but getting the place, so it's rentable to a blue collar tenant that was the target in Menands. Getting the walls nice, getting the hardwood floors nice, and then it's just miscellaneous things. In this particular building, we didn't redo kitchens and baths. They were decent when we got in. They just needed some miscellaneous fix up and clean up. So we didn't do anything with the windows. They had original windows, but they were still nicely original stained, so they went well with the property. These older properties have the original moldings where it's got the stain finish around the doors and the windows, and the grids in the windows. So it's part of the character of these buildings, and it does make them it gives them their look. So a lot of that stuff we left original, and I believe it was paint, hardwood floors, some miscellaneous in both floors, and they were good to rent.
And if you could go back and do it again, knowing what you know now, would you do it the same way?
I'd redo the kitchens. I'd redo the kitchens. They were okay, and that was the case in a lot of our buildings. Where you get used to a certain way of preparing these buildings that you're purchasing. So me and Greg, my partner, in the early days, we were just doing we were doing the minimum. We were certainly providing good apartments, but if a kitchen or a bathroom, was functional and it looked decent, why fix something that's not broken? Looking back, and that was a different time. That was a different market. So it's hard to really put it in a good perspective. Now it's 2021, and the past 10, 12, 13 years, it's become so trendy, to go in, everything goes out, new goes in. And it wasn't necessarily the best option back then. It's almost become the way it is throughout the industry now.
It is a different time, but I think it's such a numbers game. Whereas, would you get the cost of the kitchen back in increased rents? I think that's the question that it comes down to.
Yeah, I would say, ripping out kitchens and baths and replacing them does turn out to be a numbers game. So, you put those trends aside, yes, we're in a different world, but when you pull out a kitchen or a bath or both, would you be able to get, 1,000 or 1,050 instead of $900, where you just cleaned up the kitchen and bath? So even back then, that remained true. The nicer product that you deliver, the more rent that you're going to get and attract a better tenant. So it's funny. It's been one of those things over the past 15, 20 years, making those decisions. Sometimes you wish that the kitchen and bath was just a no-brainer, where you just have to rip it out. But sometimes the materials are decent, and you're in that decision-making process where you don't have to do it, and you don't, and it may be the bad decision where it limits you on your rent. Sometimes you're left in that decision-making process, which still people do quite a bit, depending on the location and their asset. You take an older kitchen, and people will resurface countertops or paint the cabinets, replace hardware, things like that. So these are decisions that we have to make when we're getting into these properties.
And it's easy to speculate from the sidelines and say that you should do the kitchen, but when it's you, your mind's on the big picture, which is still collecting real estate. And you're looking at the bank account. And if that money in there is going to go to a down payment, that might be better for your big picture goal as opposed to a kitchen, right?
And that was a big part of our decision making at the time was, spending as little as possible and get it in the portfolio to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big decision for us where we would rather have not turned a project much larger at that point in time of our careers.
How are the tenants in this building?
Tenants originally were pretty decent. Unfortunately, the person who foreclosed on the house, they lived on the first floor, so they were owner occupied, and they just couldn't pay that mortgage for whatever reason. And I remember having to do some cleanup work when we bought that. The original owner left a mess, but a lot of times when you lose your house, you're not so motivated to leave it in the best condition. But now I'm remembering specifically the first floor. I believe we had maybe one or two tenants that were, a year or two apiece, but then we ended up getting somebody that stayed for probably 12, 13, 14 years on the first floor. Second floor, same game where we had two or three tenants occupying for 2 or 3 years apiece, and then we ended up getting a tenant that was there probably the last 6 or 7 years. So Menands is good that way because it's located in a school district locally that is considered the best, that North Colony School District Menands happens to be in, which is a huge benefit for that community. And North Colony, I believe, is probably one of the higher regarded schools in the state. I know it was that way. I'm not sure if it's at that level still. I would say it probably is. So we were able to get smaller families that wanted their kids in that school district, and they were able to get an apartment that was lesser rent than the city of Albany.
You can't emphasize enough how important school ranking is for tenant quality. At this point, did you have any management employees? Were you using a management software, or was it still a one-man show?
It was me and Greg still at that point. I believe that we were just getting to the point where we were getting enough, so we were starting to really think about hiring that maintenance guy, the handyman, somebody, the one guy that we could depend on to do a lot of this work, A to Z. So when you're originally looking for that person, you're looking for the guy that can do anything from electrical to plumbing to, any of the tasks that happen in these residential properties. And we were also in that mode of stepping up to a property management software.
And is it one of those things where it's inevitable, it's going to happen, and you and Greg discuss it when you see each other, but it's just a matter of time and finding the right person and doing everything correctly?
Yeah, basically, it gets to a point. It got to a point with us where, we were building a portfolio, and we both had full-time jobs, and it was just getting busy, and it was just super clear that we just needed help because we just had too much on our plate.
Mm-hmm. This building doesn't have any of the crazy stories that we've heard before, but is there anything in particular that it taught you that has stuck with you?
Well, just that power of what we already started seeing in Albany in that Pine Hills neighborhood is, we found this other spot that we had a desire now to see if we could build, a small cluster of properties in this cul-de-sac, which down the road we eventually did. Not on a huge level, but, I think we accumulated about 4 properties, in this little cul-de-sac, which created that in the micro world of economies of scale, where it's just helpful to own 4 properties in one spot. Otherwise, it wasn't a highly eventful property. Some of our, the first floor tenant that was there for 13, 14 years, she was a quirky type tenant, but you had to do the dance with that over time. High anxiety type person where the littlest issues caused her, anguish and stress to where, a lot of the times we're like, oh, Donna, come on, relax, but nothing major. It's just one of those tenants where the smallest things were like the sky is falling. So, but otherwise she was a decent tenant.
That's usually a good thing if the property is flying under the radar, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny you say that because I would explain this to anybody who I would speak to getting in the business. When you can run a property and you get long-term tenants and there's not a lot going on, that's a good thing. Specifically, when I started doing a little bit of management for management clients, I would explain it this way: when I'm sending you your management invoice and you're just seeing my gross my management fee, which is the percent of gross income, and there isn't an occupancy fee because we got tenants staying, and there isn't any maintenance charges because nothing is happening to create maintenance where we have to send our maintenance guy or us to the property. So when my management clients got their invoices and they are looking at it saying, wow, there's really nothing going on at this property, what are we paying this manager for? Well, if you're saying that, that's a good thing, because if there's a lot going on and there's a lot of moving parts on this property, your invoice is going to be much higher. It's going to have the management fee. It's going to have occupancy fees, meaning we charge a 1 month's rent to fill vacant apartments. You're going to have those labor charges for work orders or whatever the case may be, any of the reasons why we have to go to the property. So if it doesn't look like we're doing anything, that's a good thing. That means that we're doing a very good job of keeping a stable property.
Absolutely. The first thing that pops in my mind is an analogy to officials in sports. I was a soccer referee for a number of years, and you don't want to notice the refs. So if a game goes on and you didn't notice the refs at all, it's probably a good thing. They're probably doing their job well.
Great analogy. I agree 100%.
Anything else you want to add to this episode of Collecting Real Estate?
No, I think that's just about it on this one, Stephen.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.